6 in the morning, she deletes a florist's confirmation so no one learns he sent her flowers. Nyla Rhodes is 23, a black woman, executive personal assistant to the president of Hanul Group, one of Korea's largest conglomerates. For nearly 2 years, she has managed his schedule, his private letters, his secrets. The president is Seo Tae-hyun, 33. They call him the Quiet One. A black koi carp curls up the left side of his neck, and he never raises his voice above a whisper. In private, he texts her one word, mine. In the marble lobby, a board member is watching. He walks past her without a single glance. She touches the green clover at her throat and swallows it, again. Then, late one night, he asks her to seal a confidential folder. Inside, the invoices don't match the manifests. Money routed through a shell vendor, signed off by 3 initials. She shows him. He doesn't panic. He goes very still. Lock it, he says. Tell no one. Now she holds the only clean copy, and someone inside that family already knows she has seen it. He promised her that soon, everything would be public. The love and the truth. But at a mansion reception, with the whole family listening, someone was about to ask him one simple question. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Nyla Rhodes had the florist's confirmation open on her phone before the sun cleared the Seoul skyline. 6 in the morning. The Hanul Group tower was hers alone at this hour, 40 floors of glass holding nothing but her reflection and the hum of the servers 2 levels down. She thumbed the message once. Peonies. Delivered to her door the night before. No card, because a card would have been evidence. She deleted it. Then she deleted the delivery text under it, and the one under that, and the confirmation email that had followed it into a folder she kept named after a dead app, so no one would ever open it. Her thumb moved fast. It had learned to move fast. She set the phone face down on the marble and looked at her hands instead. Steady. Good. The office was cold the way rich buildings are cold. A temperature chosen by someone who would never sit in it. Nyla kept a cardigan folded in her bottom drawer for exactly this hour, and this morning she didn't reach for it. She wanted the cold. It kept her sharp, and sharp was the only thing that had ever paid her rent. She was 23. She had a corner of a desk on the 38th floor, a title that said executive assistant in 2 languages, and a keycard that opened more doors in this tower than most of the men who ran it. That last part was not on her business card. That last part was the whole reason she was worth anything to anyone here. Her necklace had slid to one side while she slept at her desk for the 40 minutes she'd allowed herself. She righted it now without thinking. A thin gold chain, a small green 4-leaf clover resting in the hollow of her throat. Her mother had bought it at a market stall the week before the cancer took the last of her, and had pressed it into Nyla's palm and said, in a voice already going to paper, that luck was a thing you carried, not a thing you waited for. Nyla had worn it every day for 9 years. She touched it now. Her fingers found it the way other people find a pulse. The elevator chimed on the far side of the floor. She didn't turn. She knew the sound of that particular car. It only ran this early for one man, and it only stopped on 38 when he wanted something read before the markets in London woke up. Footsteps crossed the marble. Even, unhurried, the walk of a man who had never once in his life needed to run for anything. Nyla pulled the first folder off her stack and squared it against the desk edge, and by the time the footsteps reached the glass partition, she was already reading. Already the assistant, already nothing. Seo Tae-hyun passed within a meter of her. He didn't look. He never looked. Not here, not where the cameras counted and the glass carried sound. He crossed to his own office, a charcoal three-piece suit moving through the gray light without a single wrinkle in it, jet black hair swept back, the collar of his white shirt sitting exactly where a collar should sit. On the left side of his neck, above that collar, the black koi curled up toward his jaw, the one thing about him that refused to be corporate. His door closed with a soft click that was somehow louder than a slam. Nyla let out a breath she had not decided to hold. On her phone, face down on the marble, a message had come in during the last 30 seconds. She turned it over. One word. Mine. She looked at it for the length of one slow heartbeat. Then she pressed her thumb to the clover at her throat, closed her eyes, and deleted that too. The floor filled by degrees. The junior analysts came first, wet-haired and clutching coffee, bowing to the empty air out of habit before they found anyone to bow to. Then the mid-level managers, then the directors, each arriving later than the last, each measuring their importance by how long the building had waited for them. By 8 o'clock, the 38th floor sounded like every floor of every tower in the district. Keyboards, printers, the murmur of men deciding things. Nyla had already done 4 hours of work by then. She had cleared his inbox of the noise and flagged the 6 emails that mattered. She had confirmed a lunch he would cancel and canceled a lunch he had never agreed to. She had read the overnight numbers out of the Busan port operation twice because she read everything twice, and the second read was where the money lived. That was her secret, if she had one worth the word. Nyla read. Other assistants scheduled and smiled and fetched. Nyla read the things no one thought an assistant would understand, and understood them, and said nothing, and filed them in the private country of her own head, where she was not an assistant at all, but the only person in the building who knew where all the bodies of paper were buried. She had grown up doing homework by the light of a hallway bulb because the electricity in her flat was a thing that came and went. She had learned early that information was the one currency nobody could shut off. Roads. A director named Park had stopped at the corner of her desk. He was holding a report as if it were a dead animal. This, the final version? The version you signed is on your desk, Nyla said. This is the one before it. He blinked. He hadn't remembered signing anything. She watched him decide not to admit that, watched him take the correct folder and walk away with it, and never once thank her. And she filed that away too, in the same country, under the same heading. They forget the ones who remember for them. Her phone buzzed against the marble. Not the personal one, the work line, Taehyun's extension. She was on her feet before it finished the first ring. His office had one wall of glass facing the city and 3 walls facing nothing, which was the point. He sat behind a desk with almost nothing on it, a steel watch on his left wrist, a thin silver ring, a single sheet of paper turned face down. "Close it," he said, meaning the door. She closed it. The sound of the floor cut off. In here the cameras were his, the microphone was his, and for 11 minutes at a time, the glass around the rest of the world went dark. This was the only room in the tower where he looked at her. He looked at her now. "You didn't eat," he said. "I'm fine." "That's not what I asked." Nyla set her tablet on the edge of his desk and did not sit, because sitting was for people whose feet the building didn't count. "The Busan numbers are soft," she said. "Third quarter. The tonnage doesn't match the fuel spend. Somebody's paying to move air." Something moved behind his eyes. Not surprise. He was never surprised. It was the flat, cold arithmetic of a man deciding how much a thing was going to cost him. He held her gaze a beat longer than a boss holds an assistant's. "You read the fuel spend," he said. "I read everything." "I know." He said it quietly, and for 1 second, the room was not an office at all. He reached across the almost empty desk and turned her wrist over, the one with no watch on it, and pressed his thumb once to the inside of it, where the pulse ran. He did it the way she touched the clover, like finding proof of something. "Mine," he said again, out loud this time. Nyla did not pull her hand back. That was the whole trouble, and she knew it even as she stood there, that she did not want to pull her hand back. 9 floors of men in this building would have paid a year's salary for what she had, which was a boss who turned into a different creature the second the glass went dark, who sent peonies with no card, who had learned her mother's story on the 3rd night and had gone very still and said nothing at all, which from him was the loudest thing he had. "Someone will come in," she said. "No one comes in here without me." That's not the same as no one. He let go of her wrist. The cold flowed back into the space between them, like water finding a level. He was Seo Taehyun again, the one the district called the quiet one, the one who had taken the ugliest arm of an old family's holdings and made it quiet and legal-looking, and twice as profitable. The one whose own mother, people said, had not raised her voice to him in 15 years because there had never been a need. "Say it back," he said. Nyla picked up her tablet. "I have a 9:15 to move," she said, "and you have London at 10. She was almost to the door when his voice caught her, low, without heat, the way a hand catches a sleeve. "Nyla." She stopped. She did not turn. "Not here," she said. "You can have anything you want. In here. You can't have it out there. And I'm tired, Taehyun. I'm tired of being a message you delete." The silence that followed had a shape. She let it sit. Then she opened the door, and the floor rushed back in with all its keyboards and its murmur, and Nyla Rhodes walked out into it, exactly as she had walked in, an assistant, nothing, the most important person on the floor, and the only one who wasn't allowed to say so. At lunch, she did not eat. She took the stairs down 2 flights to a landing where the cameras had a blind corner she had mapped in her first month, and she stood there with her back to the concrete and let herself feel the thing she did not let herself feel at the desk. It came up fast when she stopped holding the door on it. She pressed the heel of her hand to her sternum, over the blush pink silk, over the clover, and breathed until it went back down where it lived. She had rules. She had built them like a house, because no one had built her one. Rule 1, she paid her own rent, always, to the day, so that no man alive could ever say she owed him the roof. Rule 2, she saved. Rule 3, she never let anyone see the inside of the private country in her head, because the last time she had let someone all the way in, he had been kind and good, and she had walked away from him anyway, and she still didn't have language for why. Adrian. She let herself think the name for exactly as long as it took to think it. A good man. A round, easy face, and a gap in his smile, and a way of saying her name like it was already home. He had wanted the ordinary thing, the front door and the daylight and the meeting the family, and she had said no, and he had not deserved the no, and that was the part she carried. She had traded a man who would have loved her in the light for a man who loved her in the dark. She knew the math was bad. She did the math anyway, every night, and got the same answer, and did nothing about it. Her phone buzzed. She flinched, then hated the flinch. It wasn't him. It was the front desk, 12 floors down. Delivery for N. Rhodes. Flowers. Hold or send up. Nyla stared at the screen in the blind corner of the stairwell. Peonies again. Sent to the building this time. Sent to where the front desk logs every stem and every sender, and the log lives on a server 2 floors under her feet forever. Her thumb hovered. Hold. She typed. I'll come down. She would go down. She would take the flowers into the parking garage, and she would leave them on the roof of a car that wasn't hers, and she would delete the front desk message, and by tomorrow, the log would roll over, and the record of a man who could not say her name in daylight, sending her flowers he could not sign, would be gone, scrubbed, filed in the dead country where she kept the rest of him. She caught her reflection in the small square window of the stairwell door. 23. Gold hoops. A clover at her throat that a dying woman had told her meant luck was carried, not waited for. "I'm not waiting," she told the reflection. Her voice did not shake. She made sure of it. "I'm building." She didn't fully believe it, but she'd learned that you say the thing first and let the belief catch up, the way you square a folder before you've read it, the way you steady your hands at 6 in the morning over a message you're about to erase. She straightened the pink silk. She lifted her chin. She touched the clover once, for her mother, and once more for herself. Then she opened the door and went down to bury the flowers before anyone could learn they had ever bloomed. The peonies never made it to the garage roof. Nyla got 3 steps out of the stairwell before the front desk clerk waved the bouquet at her like a flag, and by then, 2 brokers from the London deal were already crossing the lobby, so she took the flowers, thanked no one, and carried them straight to the recycling chute behind the mailroom. She fed the stems in first. The blooms caught on the lip for a second, pink against steel, then dropped. She wiped her palms on a paper towel and went back up. By 4 in the afternoon, she had forgotten them. The due diligence room on the 36th floor had 1 door and no window. Legal had booked it for the London closing, and someone had to put the physical files in order before the couriers came at 7. That someone was always her. She logged the box numbers, checked each folder against the master index, and slid the reviewed ones into the fireproof cabinet along the far wall. It was quiet work. She liked quiet work. It let the second reading happen. The first reading was the job. The second reading was hers. She was on the logistics binder when it stopped her. Busan again. 3rd quarter. The same operation she had flagged to him that morning, the tonnage that would not sit still. Only now she was not looking at a summary. She was looking at the source. Invoices, manifests, the freight schedules stapled behind them, all of it printed and initialed and filed for the buyers to trust. She read the top invoice. Then she read the manifest clipped to it. They did not agree. The invoice billed for 11 containers, moved from the Busan terminal to a bonded warehouse. The manifest under it listed 6 containers loaded. 6 out, 11 paid. She turned the page. The next pair did the same thing, off by 4. The one after that, off by 7. Somebody had been billing the company for cargo that had never touched a crane. Her thumb went to the clover before she noticed her hand had moved. She made herself set the binder flat on the table. She made herself breathe once, the way she breathed on the blind stairwell, and let the number settle. Paying to move air. That was the phrase she had used at 6 that morning. Half a guess, tossed at him across his desk. It was not a guess anymore. It was printed. It was signed. She looked at the signature. Every approval on the fake side of the ledger carried the same 3 initials in the same cramped hand. S.D.J. Not a name she filed for. Not a signatory on the London documents at all. She flipped to the vendor sheet at the back to find who S.D.J. was authorized under, and found a company she had never logged in 18 months of logging everything. Hanmyoung Freight Solutions. A single address. A registration 11 months old. No prior contracts, no history. A bank routing that led to a holding account and stopped. A shell. Built to catch the difference between 6 and 11 and carry it somewhere she could not see. She stood very still in the room with no window. She had read 1,000 documents in this building. She had learned to feel the shape of a lie by its edges before she could name the lie itself, and this one had edges everywhere. It was not sloppy. Sloppy would have been safer for her. This was patient. Somebody had done this every quarter. A few containers at a time, small enough to miss on a summary, and had signed each theft with the same 3 letters, as if daring the file to be read twice. She had read it twice. Nyla took out her phone. She did not photograph the pages. She stood there with the phone in her hand and understood, the way she understood the reach of a camera before she stepped into its cone, that a photograph would live in a cloud she did not control. She put the phone back in her skirt pocket. Instead, she copied the numbers, by hand, into the small paper notebook she carried and never showed anyone, the one whose pages she tore and burned in her kitchen sink at the end of each week. Invoice count, manifest count, the 3 initials, the vendor name, the registration date. She wrote small and fast, and when she had it, she closed the notebook and slid it into the inside seam pocket of her skirt, the one nobody knew was there. Then she squared the binder against the others, exactly as she had found it, and picked up the desk phone. He answered on the first ring. He always answered her on the first ring, in the one building where he never looked at her in the halls. "The due diligence room," she said. "You should come down." A pause. Not confusion. She had learned to read his pauses the way she read his files. This one was calculation. 2 minutes, he said, and hung up. He came in 90 seconds. The door had a soft close, and he let it seat itself behind him without a sound. And then it was the 2 of them, and the table, and the fireproof cabinet, and the koi ran up the left of his neck, the way it always did, still, black, watching nothing. "Show me," he said. She turned the binder toward him and laid the 2 documents side by side, invoice and manifest, the way she had found them. She did not narrate. He had told her once that people who narrate are people who are not sure, and she was sure. She let the pages talk. His eyes moved. Left column, right column. He turned 1 page, then another, then a third, and his face did the thing his face did, which was nothing, which was the most alarming thing a face could do. He reached the vendor sheet. He read the name of the company that did not exist. He read the 11-month-old registration. He read the initials last. Something moved behind his eyes then, 1 flicker, gone before it finished. Not surprise. She had watched surprise cross 100 faces in this room across a table, and this was not it. This was recognition trying not to be recognition. "SDJ, she said, quiet. "That's not a London signatory." "No. Who is it?" He closed the binder. He did it slowly, with the flat of his hand, the way you close a door on a room you are not ready to enter. His signet ring caught the overhead light once and went dull. "Who signs it, Taehyun?" He looked at her. In here, he looked at her. That was the cruelty of the whole thing, that the only room where she existed to him was a room with no window and 1 door. "You found this at 4 o'clock, he said. It was not an answer. "I found it at 4 o'clock. "Who else has been in this room today?" "Legal, this morning. The temp who boxed the freight schedules. Me since noon." The temp saw the summaries, not the source. "No one reads the source," she said. "That's the whole point of a summary. You read the source." "I read everything twice." She held his eyes. "You know that. It's why you keep me." The line landed somewhere it was not supposed to. She saw it land. His jaw shifted, a fraction, and he stepped back from the table and put his hands in his trouser pockets, and for a moment, the man who owned 4 floors of glass looked like a man doing arithmetic he had hoped never to finish. "Lock it," he said. "The folder?" "All of it. The binder, the source, the vendor sheet. Into the cabinet. You have the key. The couriers come at 7 for the London box. The London box goes. This does not." He nodded at the logistics binder. "This stays here. Sealed. You seal it, and you tell no one." She did not move to the cabinet yet. She stood with her hand flat on the closed binder and felt the number under it. 6 and 11, the patient theft, the 3 letters. "Tell no one," she repeated. No one. Not legal, not Director Park, especially not Park. Something in his voice cooled another degree. Not anyone who says he needs to see it. If a person asks you for this folder by name, you come to me first, before you answer him, before you even nod. Her thumb found the clover again. She caught it and pressed it flat against her collarbone, instead of letting it swing. "You're telling me to hide a fraud in a due diligence file," she said, "the night before we sell part of this company to men in London." "I'm telling you to hold it," he said, "until I know how deep it runs. There's a difference." "Is there?" "There is, if you trust me." That was the sentence that did it, not the order. The order she could have argued, but he said, "If you trust me," in the flat voice he used for numbers, and she understood that he had chosen those words on purpose, because he knew what she wanted from him, and he was spending it here, in this room, on this file, instead of on the thing she had asked for that morning at his desk. She looked at him for a long moment, then she opened the cabinet. She placed the logistics binder inside, on the middle shelf, squared to the edge. She placed the loose invoice and manifest back inside their clip and set them on top. The vendor sheet last. She swung the steel door and turned the key in the lock and felt the bolt seat. And she took the key off the ring and held it out to him across her open palm. He did not take it. "You keep it," he said. "It's your cabinet. It's your key." He looked at the steel door, then at her hand, then at her. "If it's in my drawer, it's the first place they look. If it's on you, it's the last." They. He had said. They. Twice now, not. He. She filed it. Who is? They. Taehyun? He walked to the door. He put his hand on the handle and stopped, and for the length of one breath he stood with his back to her, and she watched the koi hold still on his neck. "There's a copy," she said to his back. He turned his head. Just his head. "The source you just sealed," she said. "It's the review set. There's a working copy in the data room upstairs, unlocked, on the shared drive, because legal pulled it this morning to build the summaries. Anyone with a login can open it tonight." For the first time all day, something in him changed that she could not read as calculation. He came back from the door. He came back 3 steps and stood closer to her than the room required. "Delete it," he said. "I can't delete a legal working file. It logs who touched it. If I wipe it the night before a close, I'm the name in the log." He was quiet. "But I can pull it," she said, "onto a drive that isn't the network. One clean copy, off the shared server, before anyone else opens it tonight. And then the shared version stays where legal left it, untouched, and no log ever shows my hand." She watched him understand what she was offering, not to hide the fraud for him, to hold the only clean, complete, untampered copy of it where no one but her could reach it, to make herself the seal. "You'd hold it," he said slowly. "Somebody's going to hold it," she said. "You've decided it isn't going to be the men in London, so it's you, or it's the shared drive where SDJ can reach in and change 6 back into 6, and burn the manifests. She let that sit. Or it's me." The room had no window and one door and the 2 of them and a locked steel cabinet, and the thing that had bound them in private for a year now had a second rope running through it, and both of them felt it take the weight. "You," he said, quiet, final, like the word cost him. "Me." He reached out, not for the key, still lying flat and unclaimed on her open hand. He closed her fingers over it, one at a time, the way you'd fold a letter you didn't want read, and he held her closed fist inside his, for a second longer than a man hides from cameras should ever hold anything. "Nobody sees it move," he said. "Not tonight, not to me. Not even to you," she agreed. "Especially not to me." He let go of her hand. "If it ever comes out that I touched it, the whole thing dies. It has to come from clean hands. Yours are the only clean hands in this building." She almost asked him what the whole thing was. She almost asked him why a man would want a fraud in his own company exposed, why he had gone still at 3 letters, why he kept saying, "they," and "soon," like a man laying track in the dark. She almost asked whose initials SDJ were, because the S was his own family's name, and they both knew it, and neither of them had said it out loud. She didn't ask. She had learned that the second reading tells you more than the first question ever will. "I have to pull the copy before 6, she said instead. "That's when legal locks the data room for the close. Go." She moved past him toward the door. He caught her wrist, the same wrist, and this time he didn't say the word he'd said that morning. He turned her hand over and looked at the closed fist with the key inside it, and then he looked at her face, and whatever he wanted to say he put back where he kept everything. Nyla. It was the first time all day he had used her name, in the building he used. "My assistant." Or nothing. "Don't get caught holding it," he said. She pulled her wrist back. Not hard, just free. "I never get caught," she said. "I'm the one who deletes the flowers, remember?" She opened the door and stepped into the fluorescent hall where he would stop looking at her in 9 steps, and she walked toward the elevator with a shell company's initials in her notebook and a steel key warming in her fist, and she was already mapping the data room in her head, the login she'd use, the drive she'd carry it on, the seam pocket where it would ride home against her hip that no camera in 40 floors of glass had ever found. Behind her, the due diligence door sealed itself shut with its soft, expensive click. She did not look back at it. Looking back was how you got seen. She pressed the call button, watched the numbers climb toward her, and touched the clover once, hard, the way her mother had taught her to when the floor tilted. "Luck is carried," her mother had said, not waited for. She had carried it 9 years. She could carry one more thing. The doors opened. She stepped in alone, and the last thing she saw before they closed was the long empty hall and the shut steel door, and, 40 floors below her feet, in a city that never asked her name, the whole patient architecture of a lie that only she now held clean in her 2 hands. The data room on the 39th floor took her keycard on the 2nd try. She held the door with her shoulder and let it close behind her by weight, not by sound, and stood inside a room that smelled of toner and cold air. 2 monitors, 1 long table, a shared terminal that any of 40 logins could open. She had until 6. The clock on the wall said 5:31. Nyla did not sit at the terminal. She stood beside it and looked at the login prompt the way a swimmer looks at water before the cold hits. Here was the problem she had turned over in the elevator. Every keystroke on this machine wrote a name into a log. If she opened the legal working file with her own credentials, tonight of all nights, she became the last hand to touch it before the London close. Tomorrow, someone would read that log. Someone always read the log. So she would not open it as herself. She pulled the caddy of blank drives from the supply shelf, the ones legal used for courier handoffs, sealed in plastic, untracked because they left the building anyway. She took one. She peeled it. She thought of the notebook in her skirt seam and did not touch it. The working copy sat where the paralegal had left it that morning, in a shared folder marked for the London binder, unlocked, waiting. She did not open it on the screen. She copied it whole, folder to drive, no preview, no double click, the file never blooming open where a screenshot tool or an auto-recovery cache could catch it. Bytes moved. A green bar crawled. She watched the hallway glass instead of the bar. 40 seconds. The bar filled. She ejected the drive before the machine could ask her to confirm anything, and the caddy light went dark. The shared version stayed exactly as the paralegal had left it, untouched. No later timestamp, no new name in the log. As far as the building would ever know, nobody had been in this room at 5:32 but the heir. She slid the drive into the seam pocket, next to the notebook, and felt the two shapes settle against her hip like a second set of ribs. 5:38. She had time. She used none of it. She wiped the caddy slot with the hem of her sleeve, straightened the chair a paralegal had left at an angle, and left the room the way she'd found it, holding the door by weight again so the latch spoke softly. In the hallway she stopped walking. Not from fear, from arithmetic. She stood very still and let herself understand what she was now carrying, because a thing you refuse to name is a thing that runs you. One drive, one notebook, one key warm in her fist to a fireproof cabinet 3 floors down. Somewhere in the building, a man whose family name started the initials on those invoices, and in her chest, under the silk and the clover, the private country she had never let anyone tour. 2 ropes. She had spent 18 months keeping them separate, the love in the dark, the work in the light. Now they were braided. Whoever pulled one would feel the other move. Her thumb found the pendant without asking her. She stood with it a moment longer and made herself list the ways this could go bad, because listing them was how she robbed them of surprise. The drive could fail. She would test it tonight on a machine that touched no network. The notebook could be found. It burned in a sink every week and would burn again. The key could be traced to the cabinet, but the cabinet held a sealed binder that any auditor would expect to find sealed. Each fear, examined, shrank to a task. That was the trick her mother never taught her, and life did. You do not carry a fear. You carry a to-do list, and the fear rides quiet on top of it. What she could not shrink to a task was the man 3 floors down who kept saying, soon. She started walking again. The stairwell was faster than waiting. She took it down 2 floors, heels careful on the steel edges, and came out on 37, and there he was. Not in his office, in the corridor. Seo Taehyun stood at the far window with his back to her, phone against his ear, and even from behind she could read the line of his shoulders, the stillness that other men mistook for calm. He was not calm. He was holding something down. He heard the stair door. He turned. He said 3 words into the phone she couldn't catch, and lowered it without ending whatever it was, just pressing it dark against his thigh. "You're early," he said. "You waited." "I was in the hall," he said, which was not a denial. She walked to him because standing apart in a corridor read wrong on any camera, and there were 2 of them here, mounted at the corners, and they both knew where. Close, they could speak low. Close, they were a manager and an assistant conferring about a close. That was the only picture the lenses got. "It's done," she said. He didn't ask what. His jaw moved once. "The room?" "Exactly as legal left it. No log with my name on it. No later save." She let a beat pass. It walked out on a courier blank, untracked by design. The one clean copy is off your network, and it will stay off it. Something went through him then, brief, at the eyes. Relief was too warm a word for it. It was more like a man setting down a weight he'd decided not to admit he was carrying. "Where?" he said. "With me." She watched him. "You told me clean hands." "Mine are the only clean hands in the building. You said that." "I did." "Then don't ask me where. Asking is how it stops being clean." She kept her voice under the hum of the air handlers. "The second you know the drawer, You're a man who knew the drawer. Right now, you're a man who trusted his assistant with a filing task. Stay that. He looked at her for a long moment, and it was the look he only gave her behind a shut door. Except there was no door now, only distance, and 2 cameras, and the discipline they'd both spent a year building. He was not supposed to look at her like that in a corridor. You've thought about this more than I have, he said. I think about everything twice. It's the only thing you pay me for. The corner of his mouth almost moved. Almost. Then the phone in his hand lit against his thigh, buzzing, and his face closed like a drawer. He didn't look at it. Who keeps calling you? She asked. Family. One word, flat, and it landed between them heavier than a paragraph. She let it. She'd stopped asking whose the initials were. She didn't need to be told the letter S was his letter. The whole tower wore it on the lobby wall in brushed steel. Taehyun. She rarely used the name. She used it now. What is this? All of it. Not the invoices. The rest. He was quiet long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. There's a thing being built, he said. Under the company. Under my name. Because my name is on everything. Someone has been feeding a shell for a year, and the money doesn't leave, it circles, and it comes home wearing a suit that looks like mine. His thumb pressed his own knuckle, the signet ring turning a quarter. You found the seam of it in one afternoon because you read the source, and nobody reads the source. Somebody's going to notice I read it. Somebody already worries you might. He said it too evenly. That's why it locks. That's why it comes from clean hands, or it dies in a boardroom as a clerical error, and everyone keeps their chair. She heard the shape of a promise trying to form, and she wanted it named, because a promise you can't repeat back is a promise that dissolves. Then it comes out, she said, publicly, on paper, in front of people who can't fold it back up. Yes. When? His eyes went past her to the elevators, to the emptying floor, to the city going amber in the glass, and came back. Soon, he said. I need it clean, and I need it complete, and I need one more thing to line up. A muscle moved in his cheek, and then it stops being something we hide in a cabinet. All of it stops being something we hide. He hadn't only meant the folder. She heard the second meaning arrive under the first. Quiet, the way the notebook sat under the drive in her pocket. 2 ropes. He'd braided them in a sentence without seeming to notice he'd done it. She noticed. She noticed everything twice. Don't say all of it if you don't mean all of it, she said. I've been the part you delete for a year. Don't let the folder be the excuse that keeps me there. His hand came up. Not to her face, there were cameras, but to the space between them, and it hung there a second. A man reaching for a thing he wasn't allowed to hold in a hallway, and then he lowered it and closed it into a fist at his side. When it comes out, he said, low, you don't come out with it as the assistant who found it. No, no. His voice dropped under the air handlers, meant for one set of ears. You come out as the reason I was willing to burn my own name to the ground. The corridor held very still. Somewhere a printer woke, ran 3 pages, slept. She felt the clover under her fingers and heard her mother's bench stall voice. Luck is carried, not waited for, and understood she was doing both at once now, carrying it in her pocket and waiting on a man's soon. That's a big sentence for a hallway, she said, because if she softened, she'd break, and breaking here was a picture the lenses would keep. It's the only place I've got, he said, and that was the truth of them, laid flat. A window, a fire cabinet, a courier drive, a corridor between 2 cameras. They had a country the size of the distance a manager stands from his assistant. Everything real between them lived in the inch he wasn't allowed to close. His phone buzzed again. This time he turned it over and looked. She watched a name do something to his face that invoices hadn't. He silenced it with his thumb. "Uncle," she said. Not a guess. A read. He didn't confirm it, and he didn't deny it. And the not denying was its own confession, the second one in 10 minutes. She filed it next to the initials. She did not say the whole name out loud. Names spoken in corridors had a way of arriving places you didn't send them. "He's asking where I am," Taehyun said. "He asks that a lot lately. Where I am, who's on the file, whether legal finished the London box." He didn't used to ask. He didn't used to have a reason. His thumb turned the ring again, the small tell she'd learned to watch instead of his face. A month ago, he started calling the assistants directly, bypassing me, asking small questions in a warm voice. Who packed the freight schedules? Who has cabinet access after hours? He looked at her. He asked about you by name last week, casually, the way he asks about weather. The floor seemed to tilt a half degree and then hold. She kept her hands still on the folder of nothing. "By name," she said. He knows there's an assistant who reads the source. He doesn't know she found the seam today. If he's smart, and he is, he's already deciding you're a problem to be relocated, promoted sideways, sent to a branch, made to disappear politely. His voice never rose. That was the frightening part. That's why the folder can't sit anywhere he can reach, and neither, soon, can you. The London box goes tonight at 7. Couriers, clean. Then when he asks, that's the answer. The box went, the close happened, everything else. His eyes touched her pocket without knowing it, or maybe knowing it exactly, is a filing task an assistant handled and forgot. An assistant who forgot, she repeated. I'm good at forgetting. I deleted the flowers, remember? This time, the almost smile made it, barely, a thing at the edge of a mouth that most people had never seen move. I keep sending them anyway. I keep throwing them out. I know. He said it like it cost nothing, and she heard exactly what it cost. One day I'll send them to a door I'm allowed to knock on. Careful, she said. That's another big sentence. I'm running out of small ones. The floor was nearly empty now. Down the corridor, a cleaner's cart rolled into view, wheels squeaking, and the spell of the inch broke the way it always broke, by a third party arriving, who was allowed to be near them. He stepped back to the exact distance a manager keeps. She squared the folder of nothing in her hands, so it looked like there'd been a folder. Muscle memory. A year of it. Go home, Ms. Rhodes, he said, at speaking volume, for the cart. Long day. Yes, sir, at speaking volume 2. The two of them, fluent liars, telling the truest thing in the building, in the flattest voices they owned. She walked to the elevator. She did not look back, because looking back was a picture, and she was done leaving pictures. But at the doors she stopped, and without turning, she said it just loud enough to reach him, and no camera's microphone that she knew of. Taehyun, if soon turns into never, I won't wait at the window for it. I told you, I'm not waiting, I'm building. Behind her, quiet, I know exactly what you're building, do you? You're building the thing that ends the man who made me hide you. A pause. Hold it clean. I'll bring the last piece. The elevator opened. She stepped in alone. Again, but not the same alone as before. Before, she'd carried a lie clean in her 2 hands. Now the lie and the love shared a pocket against her ribs. One drive, one notebook, braided into a single rope that ran 40 floors down into the roots of a family that didn't know her name, and up into a chest that had just, in a hallway between 2 cameras, promised to say it out loud. The doors closed on his face, unmoving, and on his hand at his side, and on the phone in that hand lighting up a 3rd time, with a name he wasn't going to answer while she could see. She rode down. She held the clover. She let herself feel the size of what she was holding for exactly the length of the descent, and no longer, because at the bottom, the doors would open on a lobby with a wall of brushed steel spelling out his family's name, and she would walk under it the way she always did. Not through the front door. Not yet. The counter ticked past the 12th floor, and she pressed the drive and the notebook flat against her hip, and thought, soon is a word men use when they mean to be brave later. She would hold the folder clean. She would build in the light he kept promising. But she had learned, at a market stall 9 years ago from a dying woman, the difference between luck you carry and luck you wait for, and she was not, whatever else happened in this glass tower, going to be caught standing at a window again, holding her breath for a door someone else decided when to open. The doors parted. The steel letters waited. She walked out under his name with a rope of evidence and longing braided against her ribs, and nobody in the marble lobby looked at her twice, and that, for one more night, was exactly how she needed it. The invitation had come on heavy paper, hand-delivered to her desk in a cream envelope with no explanation, and Nyla had read the line about the CO family reception twice before she understood it was not a mistake. 3 days later, she stood at the foot of a gravel drive she had only ever seen in wire transfers, and the mansion at the top of it was lit like something that wanted to be photographed. She had chosen the dress herself. Dusty lavender, wrapped at the waist, a neckline that asked for nothing, soft gold heels, a small clutch that held her keycard, her phone, and nothing else. The clover sat at her throat where it always sat. She touched it once at the gate, and then made herself stop. A valet took the car of the couple ahead of her. Nobody took hers because she had come by cab and sent it away. She climbed the steps on her own. Inside, the entrance hall opened into a room of chandeliers and low music and people who knew each other. Waiters moved through with trays. Somewhere a string quartet played something meant to be ignored. Nyla took a glass of sparkling water she did not intend to drink and stood at the edge of the room, reading it the way she read everything. Taehyun was across the floor. He wore the charcoal suit, no wrinkle in it, and he was listening to a man twice his age nod at him. He had not looked at her. She had not expected him to. She counted the exits. 2. She counted the family faces she could name from 18 months of memos and photographs. The silver-haired woman in the slate jacket by the fireplace was his mother. The younger man laughing near the bar with a stud in his ear had to be the brother. And the older man in the gray double-breasted suit, gold at his cuffs, moving through the room like a host, shaking every hand at exactly the right height. She knew that walk before she knew the face. She had signed his initials into her own memory 100 times that week. SDJ. He was closer to her than anyone in the family, and he did not know she existed. That was the only advantage she had, and she meant to keep it. You're the assistant. The voice came from her left, low and precise. Nyla turned. A woman stood beside her with a glass of wine she was not drinking either. Slim, elegant, black bob cut sharp at the jaw. A wine-colored dress that had been made for her body and no one else's. Pearl at each ear. She was watching the room, not Nyla, the way two people stand when they do not want to be seen speaking. "I'm sorry," Nyla said. "Don't." The woman took a small sip. "I'm Seirin, Yoon Seirin. My father built half of what the Seo name is standing on, so I've been coming to these since I could walk. I know every face in this room, and I've never seen yours. You came alone. You're reading the exits." A pause. "You're the assistant." Nyla kept her face where she had left it. "I work at Hanul." "I know where you work." Seirin turned then, only her eyes, and looked at Nyla for the first time. "I know what you found, too." The room did not change. The music did not change. Nyla's hand did not move toward the clover, because she had spent 9 years learning not to let her hand do that when it counted. "I don't know what you mean." she said. Hanmyoung Freight Solutions. Se-rin said it quietly, the way you'd name a disease in a crowded room. Registered 11 months ago. One address. Banking that runs to a holding account and stops. She watched Nyla take it. I have the vendor number memorized. Do you? Nyla said nothing. Saying nothing was the answer, and they both knew it. There it is, Se-rin said, almost gently. You have it too. How? How do I know? Or how did I get it? Se-rin turned back to the room. Both, then. I know, because I've been watching that account for a year. Not the fraud, the man. I watched him move money out of 3 subsidiaries and back in through a shell that changes its name every 14 months. This one used to be called something else. Before that, something else. Same address, same routing, same 3 initials on the approval line. She lifted her glass a fraction toward the gray suit across the room. Him. Nyla followed the gesture without moving her head. Seo Dae-jin was laughing now at something a guest had said. One hand on the man's shoulder, gold watch catching the light. Say the name, Nyla said. She needed to hear someone else say it. She had carried it alone for 3 days, and it had started to feel like something she'd invented. Seo Dae-jin. Se-rin's mouth barely moved. The uncle, the one who smiles at everyone. SDJ. Something in Nyla's chest unlocked, and she did not let it show. For 3 days, she had built the whole thing into a shape she could hold. A fraud, a boss, a promise, a rope braided against her ribs, and a fear, underneath all of it, that she had let a man she loved talk her into carrying a bomb she couldn't see the size of. And underneath that, the smaller, uglier fear, that this was about her, that she'd been pulled in because a man wanted her close and dressed it up as evidence. It was not about her. It had never been about her. It was rot, and it had a name, and the name had been living in this family long before she walked into that building. You thought it was something else, Se-rin said, reading her. You thought this was about you and him. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Se-rin set her glass on a passing tray and took nothing to replace it. Every woman he's ever pulled close has thought that. It's flattering to be the center of a man's disaster, but you're not the center of this one. You're the paper cut. You found the seam because you read the source, and now you're a problem someone has to solve. She said it without cruelty, which made it land harder. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Tell me anyway. He's not deciding whether he likes you. Se-rin nodded once at the gray suit. He's deciding what to do about you. And he decides things the way he moves money. Quietly, through a shell, so no one sees his hand on it. Nyla's pulse moved. She kept her breath even. Why are you telling me this? Because I've watched him do it for a year, and I can't touch him alone. Se-rin turned to face her fully now, and the elegance dropped a layer, and what was under it was harder and older and tired. My father's money is tangled in 3 of those subsidiaries. If I move first, I lose everything and prove nothing. I need someone inside. I need someone who reads the source. I've been looking for you for a year, and I didn't know your name until last week, and then suddenly your name was on his list, and I thought, good, finally, there she is. I'm not on anyone's list. You are, Se-rin said. He asked about you by name. That's how these start. Across the room, a woman's laugh cut through the music. Bright, loud, deliberate. Nyla saw a plump older woman in an emerald blouse, jade heavy on both hands, working her way through the guests, with the confidence of someone who had married into money and never let anyone forget she'd earned her place by outlasting them. Aunt. She was steering toward the family cluster near the fireplace, where the mother stood, where Taehyun had drifted to stand beside his brother. That's Hyeja, Se-rin said, following her look. She asks the questions no one else will. Watch. I don't want to watch. You should. She's about to do you a favor you won't thank her for. Nyla should have moved. Every instinct she'd built in 18 months of being invisible told her to drift toward an exit, to become furniture, to not be standing in the open when the loud woman with the jade rings started naming people. But she didn't move, because Taehyun was there, and she wanted, for one stupid, human second, to see what his face did when the room got close to the truth. Haeja arrived at the fireplace. She kissed the mother's cheek. She patted the brother's arm. And then her curious eyes swept the room the way a lighthouse sweeps water, and they caught on Nyla, the one unfamiliar face, the one woman standing alone in dusty lavender at the edge of a family that knew all its own, and they stopped. "And who is this?" Haeja's voice carried. It was built to carry. Heads turned, not many, but enough. "I don't know this face." "Taehyun," she said his name across 10 feet of marble. "You brought a guest?" The music kept playing. Nyla felt the attention land on her, like a change in temperature. Taehyun turned. For 1/2 second, his eyes found hers across the room, and she saw the thing move behind them. The calculation. Fast, cold. The same look he'd had when she'd told him the Busan numbers were soft. He was doing arithmetic. She watched him do it. "She's not my guest, Auntie," he said. Haeja's brows went up, delighted, scenting something. "No? She's very lovely for not your guest." A ripple of laughter from the people near enough to enjoy it. "Come now. A beautiful girl, alone, watching you across the room? Don't be shy. Is this your girlfriend?" The word landed flat and loud and hung there. "Is this the one you've been hiding?" The room did not go silent. That was the cruelty of it. The quartet played on. The glasses clinked. The party did not care. Only the small circle near the fireplace waited, and Nyla, who had stopped breathing, and Se-rin at her shoulder, who had gone very still. Nyla looked at him. She had spent one entire morning teaching herself not to want this in daylight, not to need the front door, not to be the message he deleted. She had told him to his face, more than once, that she was tired of being the private country of his life, and still, standing in that room with a stranger's aunt demanding an answer, some small drowned part of her leaned forward toward the word he could say. He could say it. It would cost him the room. It would cost him the plan. It would put her on the map the uncle was already reading. It would be reckless and true. He straightened his cuff. "No," Taehyun said. His voice was even, courteous, bored. "She's only my assistant." Only. The word did what it was built to do. Haeja laughed, disappointed, already turning. An assistant? At a family party. She waved a jade-heavy hand, as if to shoo the idea away. Daejin works these poor children to death, sending them to stand at parties. And she moved on, the lighthouse sweeping past, hunting fresher gossip, and the small circle relaxed, and the moment closed over Nyla's head like water. She did not touch the clover. She was proud of that, later, in the way you are proud of a thing that cost you too much. Her hand stayed at her side. Her face stayed where she had left it. She lifted the sparkling water she had no intention of drinking, and she drank it, because it gave her mouth something to do. Only my assistant. She had said it herself, in fact, 3 days ago in a corridor, warning him. Don't say all of it if you don't mean all of it. She had known. She had known the whole time what he was, and what he could and couldn't do in front of the people whose name was on the wall. She had told herself she'd made peace with it. She had not made peace with it. She learned that in the half-second the word left his mouth. "Breathe," Se-rin said quietly at her shoulder, not unkind. "You knew that was coming. I know. He can't claim you in this room. Not yet. If he does, the uncle sees exactly which assistant matters, and you're not a paper cut anymore. You're the wound." Se-rin's voice was flat, reasonable, correct, and Nyla hated every word. because every word was true. He denied you to keep you off the board. It was the smart move. I know what it was. Then you know it doesn't mean what your face thinks it means. My face is fine, Nyla said, and it was. And that was the worst part. Across the room, Dae-jin had drifted closer to the fireplace, drawn by his sister-in-law's laugh, and now he stood in the family cluster with a fresh drink, and his hooded eyes moved over the guests, the way a man counts a room he owns. They passed over Nyla. They came back. They rested on her for exactly 1 beat longer than a stranger's face deserved. His mouth kept its courteous smile, and then he leaned toward Taehyun and said something Nyla could not hear, and Taehyun answered without looking at her, and the uncle nodded, and the smile did not move, and Nyla understood that she had just been discussed. There, Sirin breathed. He asked. Watch his hands stay still while he asks. That's how you know it's real. What did he say? I can't hear from here, but I can tell you what he asked. He asked who you are, and your Mr. Seo just told him something. And whatever he told him, it wasn't the truth, because the truth would end them both. Seirin turned her back to the fireplace, drawing Nyla with her, angling them both toward a set of glass doors that opened onto a terrace and the dark garden beyond. We should not be seen talking. Come stand where the cameras aren't. You know how to find those, don't you? Nyla almost smiled. She didn't. First thing I do in any room. They moved together toward the doors. 2 women in expensive dresses, drifting, unremarkable. Behind them, the party swelled and folded and forgot them. Ahead, cool air came in off the terrace, and Nyla stepped into it and let it touch her face and did the thing she always did. Took the emotion, all of it, the drowned leaning part and the cold clear rest of her, and set it down where no one could see it, and turned the whole night into a task. All right, she said, once the door had closed most of the way behind them, and the music was a wall between them and the room. You've watched him a year. I've held the source 3 days. Tell me what you have that I don't, and I'll tell you what I have that you can't get to. She looked at Seirin in the low garden light. And then we decide what we do. Seirin studied her for a long moment. Whatever she was looking for, she found it. You really do read everything twice, she said. It's why he keeps me. The word tasted wrong now. Nyla let it. Kept me. We'll see which. From inside came another bright peal of Hae-ja's laughter, and beneath it, under the string quartet, the low, even sound of Taehyun's voice answering his uncle about something that was not her, in a room that had just learned her name was nothing. Seirin stepped closer, dropped her voice to almost nothing, and began to talk. And Nyla, who had come to this house expecting to spend the night being invisible, stood in the dark at the edge of a family that had just voted her out loud that she was no one, and listened to the one person in the world who had come looking for her, and felt, for the first time in 3 days, that the rope she carried was not hers alone to hold. The rival had walked in the front door of her enemy's house and turned out to be the only ally she had. She'd learned the man she loved would deny her in daylight when it cost him too much. She had not yet learned it was a lie, built to protect her. That would come later, in the rain, at the very bottom, but the bottom was not here yet. Here, in the garden, 2 women bent their heads together over a shared number, and inside the lit house, a smiling man in a gray suit had just been handed the one name he'd been fishing for all year, and did not yet know it had been handed back to him already armed. Start with the account, Nyla said. Start at the beginning. I'll tell you where it comes out. Seirin talked for 11 minutes and never once raised her voice. Nyla listened with her hands folded over the gold clutch, and when the account had a shape she could carry, she stopped her. That's enough for tonight, Nyla said. I have where it comes out. You have where it goes in. We don't put those two things in the same room again until it's the last room. You're leaving already? I got what I came for. Nyla looked back through the glass doors, at the warm box of the reception, at the string quartet sawing away under the chandeliers. Somewhere in that light, a man had said she was only his assistant. I don't have a reason to stand here and be looked at. Seirin studied her. He'll notice you left. He noticed I was breathing and called it nothing. Nyla said it flat. No heat. The way she'd read the Busan numbers back to him a lifetime and 4 days ago. Send me a signal when your father's money is somewhere I can reach it, not before. How do I reach you? You don't. I reach you. Nyla stepped off the terrace stone and onto the gravel that ran along the side of the house, away from the front steps, away from the valet lights. That's the deal. I hold the clean copy, you hold the year. Neither of us hands the other anything until it ends him. She left Seirin standing under the eaves. The gravel path curled around the flank of the mansion in the dark. She followed it past a service door, past a row of catering vans, past 2 men in white jackets, smoking with their backs to her. None of them looked up. Nyla had spent her whole working life being the person nobody looked up at, and tonight, for the first time, it felt less like a skill and more like a verdict. Rain started before she reached the gate. Not a storm. A thin, cold, patient rain. The kind that soaks you slowly enough that you don't decide to run until you're already wet through. She didn't run. The gold heels were wrong for gravel and worse for water, and she walked in them anyway, straight-backed, down the long lit alley of the drive, past the shape of the house shrinking behind her. Her phone buzzed in the clutch. She didn't take it out. It buzzed again at the gate. A third time on the empty road beyond it, where the streetlights stopped, and the private dark of the CO estate handed her back to the ordinary city. She stood under a lamp that hummed and flickered, and finally looked. 3 lines from him. Where did you go? Answer me. Nyla. Her name. The one he'd used twice in 4 days, both times when he needed something from her hands. She read the 3 messages the way she read everything. Once for what it said, once for what it cost. The first was control. The second was control losing its grip. The third was a man who had denied her in front of his family and expected the denial to stay in the room where he'd left it. She turned the phone face down against her palm. Rain gathered in the seam of the screen. A taxi came, its light a smear of yellow through the water, and she raised her hand and it stopped. And she got in and gave the driver her own address, the apartment she paid for on time, every month, with her own name on the lease. The heater breathed warm at her ankles. Her dress clung. She held the clutch in her lap and watched the estate walls slide backward through the glass, and she did not cry, because crying was a thing you did when you still expected the world to change its mind. The phone buzzed a 4th time in her hands. She let it. At a red light, the driver glanced at her in the mirror. Long night, miss? Ending 1, she said. By the time the taxi reached her block, the rain had thickened. She paid, tipped the exact amount she always tipped, and climbed the 2 flights to her door, with water running off the hem of the lavender dress, in a thin rope onto each step. Inside, she did not turn on the big light. She turned on the lamp by the window, the one that made the room small and hers. Then she stood in the middle of her own floor, dripping, and did the arithmetic she'd been putting off since the terrace. She had lost 3 things tonight, and she made herself name each one before she let herself sit down. The first was the man. That one she'd half lost already, over months, in the space between mine, typed on a screen, and only my assistant said to a room. Tonight had only finished a sentence he'd started a long time ago. The second was the job. She hadn't lost it yet, but she looked at the shape of the next weeks. Dae Jin asking for her by name, the folder sealed 3 floors up, Taehyun needing her to stay so the evidence stayed in hands he could reach, and she understood that staying was the trap. As long as she sat at that desk, she was the assistant who read too well, the paper cut the uncle had decided to close. Staying kept her useful to Taehyun and disposable to his family at the same time. She would not spend one more morning being both. The third thing she named last, because it hurt in a place the other two didn't reach. The family. Not the one in that lit house, the one she hadn't let herself picture. The front door, the daylight, a table where a man said her name because he wanted to and not because he needed her hands. Adrian had offered her that, and she'd said no, and carried the no like a stone. Taehyun had dangled it and called it soon, and tonight she'd watched soon cost her nothing to spend and buy her nothing at all. She sat down on the edge of the bed, still wet, and she cut all three loose in the order that hurt least. The job first. She opened her laptop. She did not draft the resignation the careful way, saved and slept on and softened by morning. She wrote it the way she wrote everything that mattered, plain, short, no room for a reader to negotiate. She addressed it to HR and copied the director. Not to him. She would not hand Taehyun a private letter he could delete the way she deleted flowers. Please accept my resignation from Hanale Group, effective immediately. My building access and equipment will be returned in the morning. Thank you for the opportunity. She read it twice. She almost softened the last line, the thank you, because the opportunity had been real, and the man who signed her offer letter 18 months ago had believed in her keycard, even if his director never did. She left it. Gratitude that cost you nothing was still true. She added nothing else. She sent it. The little sound the laptop made was almost nothing. A soft exhale of a chime. 18 months closed in one chime. She thought about the desk she was leaving, the drawer where she kept the paper notebook she burned every week, the chair angled just so toward the glass, the key card that opened more doors than most of the executives carried, the one that had made her useful and, in the end, made her a target. Someone would clear all of it into a box by lunch tomorrow and label it with her name spelled slightly wrong. That was how a building forgot you. Cleanly, and by Thursday, she sat with it. The rain worked at the window. Her phone buzzed a fifth time, and this time she looked, because she wanted to know how fast the news traveled inside a man who had a name in every system in that building. Don't do anything tonight. We talk in the morning. Stay. He'd seen the resignation route through the system already, or Park had called him, or he simply knew her well enough to know what a woman does the night she's called nothing in front of the people who made her hide. Stay, the same word Se-rin had used on the terrace, turned inside out. Se-rin had meant, don't run yet. He meant, don't stop being mine to reach. Nyla typed one word, deleted it, typed nothing, and set the phone face down again. She peeled off the wet dress and hung it over the bathroom door to dry, and she put on the cream knit sweater that swallowed her hands and the soft gray trousers, and she stood in front of the small mirror and looked at the woman there. The clover pendant lay against the wool, the only gold she had left on. She touched it, not the nervous touch, the deciding one, and let it go. Then she did the second cutting, the evidence. She went to the drawer where she kept the things that mattered, and took out the courier drive, the little blank rectangle that held the only clean copy of the fraud, and the paper notebook with the invoice counts, and the manifest counts, and the 3 initials in her own tight hand. The fireproof cabinet key was on the ring in the clutch. 3 objects. She laid them on the table under the lamp and looked at them the way an auditor would. As long as any of these sat in her apartment, she was a woman a man could visit at midnight. As long as the drive lived in a drawer with her socks, it lived somewhere a search warrant, a break-in, a favor called in by a man with gold on his wrists could reach it. She'd told Taehyun the clean hands were the only hands in the building. Clean hands meant nothing if the thing they held sat in an unlocked drawer in a rented room. She looked up the nearest bank with a night safe branch and a deposit box program that opened at 9. She wrote the address on the inside of her wrist in pen, the way her mother used to write reminders when there was no paper. She would not put it in the phone. The phone was his country. The wrist was hers. The drive and the notebook went into the inside pocket of the coat by the door. Zipped, the coat itself hung where she'd see it first in the morning. The cabinet key she left on the ring, because the sealed folder 3 floors up was a separate problem, and separate problems were carried in separate hands. The phone buzzed a 6th time. She turned it fully off. The screen went black, and the room went quieter than it had been all night. And in that quiet, she finally understood the size of what she'd done. No job, no man, no morning where any of this got easier. She lay down on top of the covers in the sweater and the trousers, and she stared at the ceiling, and the old country of her private mind, the one she never let anyone see, filled up behind her eyes. She let it. There was no one here to hide it from. She'd spent 9 years being careful in front of everyone, and tonight the room was empty, so she let the careful thing set down its weight. She did not sleep much. At 6, out of a habit her body kept even after she'd fired the reason for it, she was up. Gray light. Thin rain gone to mist. She made coffee in the machine she owned and drank it standing at the window she paid for. And at 10 to 9, she put on the coat with the drive zipped into its chest and walked 4 blocks to the bank while it was still emptying its shutters up. The clerk was young and slow and asked for 2 forms of ID and a signature card, and Nyla filled every field in block capitals, and she rented the smallest box they had, bottom row, the one you kneel to reach. In the little private room with the door that locked from the inside, she took the drive and the notebook out of the coat and laid them in the long steel drawer, and she closed it, and she turned the 2 keys, hers and the bank's, and she listened for the click that meant it was somewhere no message could reach. Click. The clean copy was out of the drawer with her socks and into a steel box under a bank whose name meant nothing to the CO family. She kept the bank key on a plain ring, separate from everything, and put it in the zipped pocket where the drive had been. An empty pocket now, holding one small key that opened the only door that mattered. She walked out into the mist, with her hands in the sweater sleeves, and nothing on her but the clover, and she felt, for the length of 1 block, almost light. Then the lightness curdled, the way it does, into the plain arithmetic of a woman who has just made herself safe and alone in the same hour. Her phone was off in her pocket. She turned it on at the corner, because she wasn't a coward, and she wanted to see the shape of the storm before she chose whether to walk into it. It bloomed with the night's missing hours, 11 from him, the last one at 4 a.m., a time she'd never known him to be awake, a man who slept like the numbers were already handled. 1 from Se-rin, a single character, a checkmark, their agreed signal that the father's money was somewhere reachable. And 1, sent at 8:40 that morning, from a number she had not seen in almost a year and had never deleted, because deleting it had always felt like the last unkindness she wasn't willing to do. Adrian. Heard you had a rough few days through a mutual. No agenda. If you ever want a coffee that isn't about anyone's family, I'm around. She stood on the wet corner and read it twice, once for what it said, and once for what it cost him to send. And for the first time in 4 days, something in her chest moved that wasn't loss. She did not answer it. She did not answer any of them. She put the phone away and turned the last cutting over in her mind. The man, the one thread she'd left for daylight because she'd known it would be the one that fought back. She would not text him. Texting him let him answer. She would go in once. At the appointed hour her badge still worked. return the badge and the laptop the way her letter promised, hand it to the front desk, 12 floors below the office where he'd first said her name, and walk out of the Hanul Tower through the lobby, under the brushed steel wall with the family's name on it, without going up. He would learn she'd come and gone the way everyone learned everything about her. After, from a log, from an empty desk. She started walking back toward her apartment to pick up the badge and the laptop, and the mist beaded on the wool of the sweater, and her phone buzzed one more time against her hip, and she let it, because she had already answered the only way that couldn't be deleted. She'd stopped waiting at the window. She'd emptied the drawer, closed the account with the building, and put the one clean thing in the world where no man could reach in and take it. She had lost the job by her own hand, the man by his, and the family she'd let herself want by the plain math of a night in the rain. 3 ropes, cut clean. And walking home through the gray, with an empty pocket and a small bank key and a checkmark from a woman who'd watched a thief for a year, she understood that cutting the ropes had not left her with nothing. It had left her with the only thing that had ever been hers to hold. The key was cold in her pocket, her name was on the box, and somewhere across the city, a man was texting an empty desk, learning for the first time what it felt like to reach for someone and delete himself instead. Se-Rin was already at the corner table when Nyla walked into the tea house, 2 cups poured, neither touched. She had chosen the seat that faced the door. Nyla had taught herself the same habit years ago, and seeing it in someone else made her slow her step. "You came," Se-Rin said. "You said the last room. This isn't it. It's close." Se-Rin slid a thin folder across the table with one finger. Not the sealed one, a new one. "Sit first." Nyla sat, coat still on. The bank key was in the zipped pocket over her hip, and she pressed her forearm against it, the way she used to touch the clover. The folder held printouts, 3 bank routing pages, each stamped with a different company name over the same 11-digit account, the numbers circled in red, then a 4th page that was not about money, a memo, Hanul letterhead, dated 4 days before the reception. Nyla read it twice. The second read was where the floor dropped. Her name sat in the 3rd line. Not a title. Her name, spelled correctly, the way almost no one at Hanil bothered to spell it. Flag for relocation. Discreet. Prior to audit window. She set the page down. Signed? Se-Rin tapped the bottom. 3 initials. The same cramped hand she'd copied into a paper notebook in a windowless room on the 36th floor. "He wrote the order to move you," Se-Rin said, 4 days before the party. "Before you ever walked in." Nyla looked at the initials for a long time. She had spent 5 days building a story where the family had looked at her and found her lacking. She had folded it around herself and called it the truth. The truth was smaller and colder than that. "It was never about whether they liked me," she said. "No. He needed me gone before the audit because my keycard opened the room where the seams show." She pressed her thumb flat on the memo. "The reception wasn't a family looking me over. It was him confirming which assistant to remove. At the fireplace, he asked Taehyun about you. You saw it. I said it looked like a man deciding what to do with you. It was. He wasn't asking if you 2 were together. He was asking if you were the one who could read the account." Nyla thought about the aunt's loud question, the laughter. The word only dropped into the room like a coin into a well. She had walked out into the rain believing she'd been ashamed of. She had quit a job and buried the evidence inside a story that was a lie, built to hide a man's theft. "And the denial," she said. "Only my assistant." Se-Rin chose the words the way she chose the chair. "If he'd claimed you in front of Dae-jin, you'd have stopped being a paper cut and become the wound. Dae-jin would have known exactly which assistant mattered enough to protect. You'd have gone from relocate quietly to something that doesn't get a memo. She turned her cup a quarter turn. The denial kept the order on paper, instead of in a car. You're telling me the worst thing he did kept me alive. I'm telling you what the account tells me. Nyla laughed once, without humor. She had built her life on reading the source twice, on trusting the document over the feeling. The one time she'd trusted the feeling, the shame, the empty desk, the ignored messages, she'd read it exactly wrong. She slid the memo back into the folder, kept it. Seirin let her. There's more, Seirin said. The thing in your box isn't just proof Daejin stole. Paired with this memo, it's proof he moved to remove the one person who could catch him, motive and act, in his own hand. That's not embezzlement anymore. That's a man protecting a crime by clearing the witness. I'm the witness. You're the witness with clean hands and the only complete copy off the network. Seirin leaned in. Everything I collected proves he's dirty. Nothing I have proves it lands. You're where it lands. What do you want from me tonight? Nyla said. Not the last room. Tonight. Nothing tonight. Seirin stood, smoothing her dress. I wanted you to see the memo before he tells you himself. He'll try. I wanted you to already know it. So when he says it, you're reading his face instead of hearing it for the first time. She set money under her cup. You read faces better than anyone I've met. Don't let him take that away by getting there first. She left. Nyla stayed until both cups were cold, then turned her phone face up. The messages had stopped in the night. The last from Taehyun was still 4 in the morning, unanswered. Beneath it, the checkmark from Seirin. Beneath that, Adrian's note, 8:40 the previous day, still unanswered. She read it a third time, then she typed back, 2 words, tomorrow works. She sent it before the part of her that ran the risks could file an objection. Adrian half rose when she came into the restaurant, even though he was already up, like his body couldn't decide how much welcome was too much. The camel coat hung over the back of his chair. You look like you slept, he said, which was a kind lie. I look like I didn't. She sat. Powder blue satin, gold at her ears, the clover at her throat. She had dressed for herself, not for him, and noticed the difference in how the dress felt. They ordered. He talked about nothing on purpose. A cousin's wedding, a running injury that had turned him into a swimmer. He did not ask about the rough few days. He let her decide whether to bring the weather inside. Halfway through, he set down his fork. I'm not going to pretend this coffee turned into dinner by accident, he said. I wanted to see you. I told myself I was giving you space. Really, I was afraid of the answer. Adrian, let me finish, or I'll lose it. He smiled at his own hands. You said no to me once because I wanted the ordinary thing. Front door, Sunday lunch, my mother learning your coffee order. You made it sound like a cage. It was just daylight. He looked up. I still want that. With you, if you want it. And if you don't, I'd rather hear it clean than keep inventing reasons you might. He had said it plainly. No corner, no camera, no coded word. And a year ago she had turned exactly this down for a man who said her name only behind a closed door. Nyla folded her hands. You're a good man. That's not a soft way to say no. It's the whole reason this is hard. His shoulders settled. He had come ready to be turned down, and she could see him deciding to take it well. Her phone lit on the table between them, face up, because she'd stopped hiding it. A single line filled the top of the screen. Taehyun, I know where you are. I'm outside. I won't come in unless you tell me to. Please tell me to. Adrian read the name and the words and sat back. That's him, he said. Not a question. That's him. The one you said no to me for. Yes. Adrian was quiet a moment. Then he did the thing that told her, finally, what kind of man she'd said no to. He picked up his coat. "Don't," she said. "I'm not leaving because I lost. I'm leaving because you already know your answer, and you're too polite to make me watch you find it." He stood, the gap in his smile smaller now. "I hope he built the front door, Nyla. You were always going to want it, whatever you told yourself, whatever you told me." He set a hand on the back of her chair, not on her. "If he didn't build it, come find me. I'll wait 1 more year, not 2. Adrian, tell him to come in, or tell him to leave. But don't make him stand in the street. That's the one thing neither of us ever deserved." He walked out, and did not look through the window on his way past. She understood it as the mercy it was. Then she typed 1 word: "Come in." He came through the door like a man holding a breath since 4 in the morning. The suit was immaculate. Everything above the collar was not. Gray sat under his eyes she had never seen. The koi at his neck moved when he swallowed. He stopped 2 steps from the table, the distance a manager keeps. Then he closed it, pulled out the chair Adrian had left warm, and sat. And for a moment, the man who never showed his hand had nothing left to hide behind. "I sat outside your building. You weren't there. I sat outside the bank because you wrote the address on your wrist once and thought I didn't see. You weren't there either." His voice was even, which was worse than if it had shaken. "Then I saw you here, with him. You've been following me. I've been looking for you. There's a difference, and you know it, because you invented it." He set both hands flat on the table. The signet ring caught the light. "I need to say a thing badly, and I've never said it well, so I'll say it plainly." "I already know it," she said. He stopped. "The memo. Daejin's order to relocate me, 4 days before the reception. His name on it, not yours. You knew. That's why you told me not to get caught holding anything. That's why you denied me in that room. Se-Rin walked me through the account this afternoon. Whatever you came to confess, I've read it. Twice." She watched his face the way Se-Rin had told her to, and saw the thing she needed. Not surprise. Relief. The relief of a man who had rehearsed a confession and just learned he wouldn't have to perform it. "Then you know I denied you to keep his order on paper," he said. "I know that's the story that makes you the hero. It's not a story that makes me anything." He leaned in. "I stood in that room and let my aunt call you nothing, and chose the word that kept a car from showing up outside your apartment. And it was still the worst thing I have ever done. Both are true. I need you to hold both. That's a lot to ask of the person you called only. I'm not asking you to forgive the room." His jaw worked. "I'm asking you not to marry that man because of it." There it was. The frost cracked all the way through. "I heard the whole thing from the street. Him offering you a door and a Sunday and his mother. The good version of a life. And I understood that I'm the reason you'd take it, not because you love him. Because he says your name in the light and I said it in the dark, and after enough dark, daylight is the only thing that looks like love." Nyla did not touch the clover. Her hand stayed flat on the table beside his. "You don't get to beg," she said, "if you were never going to claim me." "I'm going to claim you," he said it fast, like a man stepping off a ledge. "I'm not waiting for soon anymore." Soon was cowardice, wearing a schedule. Words. Then watch what I do with them. He stood and buttoned his jacket, the old reflex. "I'm taking the folder to the authorities, not the copy in your box. That stays yours. It's your safety. Keep it. My own set, everything with my name on it, and I put a lot of it there myself, because he built the shell under me, and I let him, for a year, because he was family, and I was tired." His mouth thinned. "I'm going to hand a prosecutor the paper that ends the Semo name in a courtroom. My mother's, my father's, mine, and then there won't be a fortune left to hide you behind. There'll just be me. You'd burn it. I told you I would. In a hallway on the 37th floor. That you'd walk out not as the assistant who found it, but as the reason I was willing to burn my own name to the ground. He looked at her steadily. I meant every word except the timing. I was going to do it slow, so it wouldn't hurt. Slow is just another word for hidden. She stood too. They were close now, in a restaurant with strangers eating around them, in the light, in public, and neither of them lowered their voice. If you do this, she said, and I mean actually do it, hand the paper over, let the name fall. I have one condition, not for the case, for me. Name it. Never again in the dark. Her voice did not break, though it wanted to. No more deleted flowers. No more only my assistant. No more me being the message you send and erase. If you claim me at the front door, lights on, in front of the woman who called me nothing. Or not at all. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said the one thing she did not have a defense against, because it was true. I faced a room full of my uncle's men without blinking, he said. And I almost lost you because I was afraid to tell my own family 3 words. He held her eyes. I choose her. That was the whole war, and I found it easier to face guns. The paper fell the way a heavy thing falls, slow at the top, all at once at the bottom. Tae-hyun walked into the prosecutor's office himself. He carried his own set, the routing pages, the shell registrations, the memo, and a signed statement naming the account, the year, the family. He did not leave out the part where his own name sat on the structure. He made himself a witness against his blood. Dae-jin was arrested on a Thursday, in the gray double-breasted suit, the jade cufflinks catching a camera he didn't know was there. The courteous smile held until the second question, then it didn't. The family closed ranks and found nothing left inside them to protect. The subsidiaries froze. The shell dissolved. Seirin's father's money came home, most of it, exactly what she'd worked a year for. Misuk did not speak to her son for 11 days. On the 12th, she called. Nyla heard only his side. When he set the phone down, something in his shoulders had come loose that she had never seen unfastened. Adrian sent one message, a week after the arrest hit the papers. Front door then. Good. A. She wrote back, "Thank you, Adrian," and meant the whole year in it. And he never wrote again, which was its own kind of grace. Months moved, not years. She would not have let it be years. The gravel drive was the same, the lamps the same. Nyla had walked it once in dusty lavender, alone, sent for like staff, climbing the front steps as a guest no one would claim. She climbed them again on a night in early autumn, and this time a hand was under hers, and the doors opened because he opened them, and the whole room turned. She wore soft peach that flowed from an empire waist over the curve of her body, gold at her ears and wrists, the clover at her throat, where it had been for 9 years. The dress did not hide the swell beneath it. She had chosen it so it wouldn't. The string quartet faltered on a note. Somewhere near the fireplace, Aunt Haeja's glass stopped halfway to her mouth. Taehyun did not walk her in, and then drift toward the family the way men do at parties. He kept her hand. He walked her to the center of the room, to the exact spot where a year of denial could still be smelled in the air, and he raised his voice, the quiet one, the one they called the quiet one, so that it carried the way his aunts had once carried. For those who asked, a long time ago, and were told a lie, he said, "This is Nyla Rhodes. She isn't my assistant." He turned, so the whole room got his face. "She's the woman I'm going to marry, and that," he said, and for the first time in the history of that house, his eyes went soft in front of witnesses, "is my child." Nobody laughed this time. Haeja set her glass down without drinking from it. Junho was the first to move, crossing the floor with the easy grin, hand out, saying something warm that Nyla half heard because her ears rang with the strangeness of being seen. Seyrin, in wine-dark silk by the window, lifted her glass an inch and tilted it, the same signal she'd once used to say the money was reachable, repurposed now for something without a word. Misuk came last. The petite woman crossed the room with her rigid posture and pressed lips, and stopped in front of Nyla, and looked at the swell beneath the peach dress, and the clover, and the face her son had denied in that very room. The narrow eyes did their work. Nyla let herself be read. She was good at reading. She could stand being read. "He didn't tell us your name," Misuk said. "For a year, I thought that meant you were nothing." "I know," Nyla said. "I was wrong about which of them was nothing." The old woman's mouth moved, a small, hard thing that on any other face would have been nothing, and on hers was everything. She reached out and touched the clover pendant with one finger, the way Nyla touched it herself. "This is real gold? Market stall." "My mother, a week before she died." Misuk nodded once, as if that settled a question she'd been carrying. "Then it's worth more than anything in this house," she said, and stepped aside to let her son's chosen woman all the way in. Later, near the tall windows, Taehyun stood with his hand at the small of Nyla's back, in the open, where the room could see, and looked out at the drive he'd once made her leave by the side of. "You came in the front door," he said. "You opened it. I said I'd end the man who made me hide you." His thumb moved once against her spine. "I didn't understand the man was mostly me." Nyla touched the clover, the last time she would need to, because her hand went there out of habit, and found, for once, nothing in her nervous. "My mother used to say luck is carried, not waited for," she said. "I stopped waiting at the window a long time ago. Turns out, you finish building something, and then, once, you get to just stand in it." He almost smiled. On him, almost was the whole thing. "For the record," he said, "the guns were easier." "I know." She leaned into his side, in front of all of them, and did not lower her voice. "That's how I know you meant it." If you want to watch all the stories without any ads and also get access to bonus scenes, extended epilogues, and exclusive spicy chapters, head over to our Patreon. Scan the QR code on the screen. The link is in the description or in the pinned comment. See you there. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever loved someone who kept you as their private mine, but never claimed you out loud in front of the people who mattered? Have you ever held a truth that could tear a powerful family apart and stayed silent because you were told to lock it away? And when someone finally chose you in front of the whole world, did you make them promise it would never again be hidden? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about hidden love, dignity, and truth, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.